Okay, we are continuing 20, parak 20, pasuk 1. Leitz hayayin homei shechar b'chol shogeg b'lo yachkam. So let's try to remember which of the 7 translations we actually ended up favoring. So the literal translation, I think, Leitz the wine cries out for drink. That's not really relevant. That was just a literal translation, right? Then the wine Leitz cries out for drink. That one we did. That seems like a candidate. Then we have wine makes a late, strong drink makes one cry out. That was our scroll. That one is also good. Wine is a late, hard drink is rowdy. That was the altar one. I don't think we did that.
I feel like Ariel was using that.
Wine is a late.
Maybe.
He did incline towards that at one point because because I think he said something like late, right? Because wine is such a potent way of like opening up the late's like tendencies, then you could like call wine the lates. But I feel like that is essentially saying wine makes a lates, and there's just like poetic in it. Yeah.
So actually, the idea that Nathan and I had.
Hold on, before we get into new ideas, I just want to
use that.
Oh, did okay, fine, okay. Yeah. All right. 5, a late is wine. Hard drink is the cry out. We didn't do that one. 6, a late is a wine guy. That I mentioned that the Mefarshim seem to be saying is like the main translation. And then we had Joe's translation, one who mocks wine is in reality crying out for hard alcohol. Right. And then the last part is unanimous, and everyone who errs in it will not become wise. Right. So we had at least, well, we had 2 or 3 approaches yesterday. So we had Joe's approach, which was basically that a person who has a part that that is tempted to overindulge in wine will counteract it by mocking it. Right. That is a person who mocks wine is actually crying out for strong drink, and we said that that's the crying out for strong drink either is a synonym, like you could just interchange them, or it means that he wants wine, but he wants it like Derek Chikorus, like to make him drunk, you know. And then what was the explanation for V'chol Hashogeg B'lo Yachkam?
We like talked about it a couple different things.
Yeah. No, for Joe's though.
Yeah,
it was a couple
yeah,
different things. Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing that I said was that if he's mocking it and then errs in it, then it'll be harder for him to overcome that because because now he's like doing the thing that he degraded.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's good. Then another one I think we had was Joe was maintaining that the guy actually is involved in drinking
as he's mocking
the wine as he's mocking it, which really ends up in the same place that you just said, right? Like it's just the pasuk is focusing on different points in that person's struggle, like. Because if you say he's not actually drinking wine, then the pasuk is spelling out a consequence. Right. But if you say he actually is drinking wine, then it's spelling out his current state.
Yeah.
You know. So so that's that.
Right. I think there was another verse which is that I don't know if it works, but that this is like what he's saying, like.
Oh right. Leitz hayayin. So someone who mocks wine is really crying out for strong drink, and he is saying kol hashogeg b'lo yachkam.
Right. Because his mistake is. That he sees drinking wine as like equivalent with getting drunk.
Right.
So he sees those as
but see, and now that we're saying it that way, I feel like that is actually a completely different idea. The way Joe was saying it was an idea about a certain relationship that a person has with alcohol. Mm-hmm. I feel like that, even if we read it his way, is more like a thing that it's a mistake people make about absolutism in taivas, yeah, right, or in not in taivas, in pleasures, you know, right. Like they feel like you either have to be completely against it or completely for it, and like that's kind of what Rambam condemns in the beginning of Hilchos Deos Perek Gimel about like the person says like since taiva and kavod and whatever are bad, I'm going to completely distance myself from them and become like an ascetic. And then he quotes the Nazir like as an example of someone who's going to the extreme, you know, of what do you call it? Of like completely rejecting wine when really the Torah holds that wine in moderation is fine. You know.
It's funny that I think the Muslims actually.
Oh yeah.
They oscar wine.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I was reminded of that the other day. I don't know where I must have read it or something like that, and I was like. I don't hear about that. You hear about Mormons a lot. Mormons can't have any, or maybe It's just because I'm from the West Coast and
Yeah.
we're close to Utah. All
Yeah,
right, fine, never mind.
mind.
Yeah, never mind. Yeah. I guess I didn't grow up around any Muslims, but I grew up around a significant number of Mormons. But yeah, all right, fine.
Also, one more
yeah.
thing in the Yain verse Kefar,
Yeah.
aside from the first two, that also it could be he's mocking wine when the thing that he yearns for is actually stronger than
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
it's like Derek Shekros, but also the fact that it's more potent.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that takes care of Joe's approach in its multifaceted ways.
Mhm.
Okay, then we had Ariel's approach, which I don't feel clear enough to articulate. Anyone want to take a stab at it? Or if not, then we'll just go move on until Ariel comes. Yeah. Okay, so then there was my two half approaches, which is that the Leitz is someone who is aggressive and haughty and fairly unrestrained in his mockery. But even the Leitz is gonna exercise some restraint. Like, for example, a Leitz is not just gonna walk into a room and then just start insulting everybody. Like that's just not gonna happen. He would love to be able to do that, but he's not gonna do that because there's still he lives in society. So he'll find ways to like rationalize that it's okay to do this, or he'll find like opportunities to do this, and like he won't be able to control himself. But then wine loosens the tongue, both physiologically and socially. So he'll be drawn to wine because it's a state that he can put himself into where he has no conflict.
Right. Where he could literally just walk into a room
Yeah.
and just start saying things, and everyone's like, oh, he's drunk.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And he's getting full pleasure out of it. And he doesn't have to experience whatever lingering guilt there might be because of that. So he's putting himself into a state where like he can go all out on his lateness, as Ariel said. Okay. And then what?
I said laziness.
Laziness, yeah. And then the second half I was saying is a separate idea, and this is what we were trying to unify. So second half is saying Chochmah in Mishlei is all about facing reality and being able to realize that there are aspects of reality that are not in line with my desires, and like I either have to accept them or I have to use Chochmah to try to like set up the right, the best results. But it's moving towards facing reality. If you are using wine, and then by extension everything else, like anything else that could be, a way of escape, but like this pasuk is about wine. If you're using wine that's your coping mechanism for like life's conflicts, you're at odds with your Chochmah development. You will never be able to progress as a Chochmah if you keep on doing this. Now, this does not mean that like if a person had a really bad day and like gets drunk, that's not what this is talking about. This is someone who's shogeh bo on a perpetual basis, that they're constantly doing this, or this is the primary way that they relate to wine, and it's like a habitual thing, So then that's going to anchor them to not being able to develop in Chochmah. And I mentioned you could develop in thinking, you could develop in like analysis, you could develop in a bunch of other areas, but in Mishlei Chochmah of like making decisions and having the world of ideas be real to you in a way that affects your behavior, that's not going to happen, as long as you're attached to that, So then the question is there a way to unify the two?
Yeah, they don't seem like two different.
I feel like you
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah.
Couldn't someone explain?
Because the guy, when he's walking in and just drinking and going on a rampage, he's literally he's putting himself in a different framework of reality.
Yeah.
Where he's avoiding reality.
Okay.
Because if he were to not get drunk and be in the real world, he wouldn't be able to act that way.
Okay.
By drinking, he takes himself out of it.
What's a similarity between the two halves? But I don't see a subject. What's the subject of the pasuk according to me?
I mean, I guess I can't say the subject in the
Okay.
word yet.
Yeah.
But he's basically like, I don't know if Leitz is an audience of Mishlei, but
it's not an audience of Mishlei typically because we read that before that he's not going to be open to tochacha.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But I guess if it's as a wine Leitz, where he's only a Leitz when he's drunk, you can talk to a person.
Right, that's true. Yeah. Oh, that's a point I didn't bring out enough yesterday, which is that this might not be talking. I mean, we said this in translations, but this might not be talking about a full-blown Leitz. We kind of actually entertained this with Ariel for possibility that it's a wine Leitz. Right. Yeah. So like, and that was I gave the example of like the women in the Hamptons. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but like I don't know if they're necessarily Leitz all the time, but if they get together every day to like engage in Leitzan, like a Moshav Leit team, a session of scorners, then they'll do that. So that person you can talk to. You're right.
So basically that person thinks like, oh, there's no harm. Like I'm whatever. I'm just like having fun, easing my guilt. Yeah. Enjoying myself.
Right.
But he doesn't realize that there are long-term consequences of what he's doing.
Something just clicked. Okay. Yeah. As I heard what you said and I agree with it. I just don't have anything to add.
Okay.
But I'm realizing now. So maybe the subject of this pasuk is overindulgence in wine. And when I say overindulgence, I mean abuse, overindulgence. I'm not saying quantitatively over abuse. I'm saying like the way that you relate to it. And it's really pointing out. See, let me start with the thing that was bothering me, that was preventing me from seeing the unity. The second part seems very general. The first part seems very specific, and that asymmetry was bothering me. But it's possible that there are, I'm going to try talking this out, that like the first half is talking about when you relate to wine as a default, to get into a default state of uninhibitedness for your instincts and emotions. And the second half is when you relate to it as a way to avoid the facing external reality. And those are both, in other words, okay, let me pause and say an idea from Rebbe, not related to this, about Kriya Shema. I think he said, I don't even remember the context, but like, Kabbalah Olmahu Shemayim, accepting the yoke of God's kingship, occurs on two fronts: the external world and the internal world. There's facing external reality and realizing that God is the source of that, and that the external world is governed by Chochmah, and you have to be makabel Olmahu Shemayim and like submit to that and realize that it is that you are subordinate to it. Then there's the internal world of realizing that your psyche is and your instincts are driven also by principles of Chochmah and laws of nature, and you have to be willing to face and overcome the internal world as well, you know. And Kabbalah Olmahu Shemayim is always progressing on both fronts, and that was his warning about why someone asked, this is in the Q&A, like, should everyone go into therapy? Because theoretically, the answer should be yes, because it's like youthful, you know. So he was saying how like there's a pitfall where if you're working on specific problems, then it makes sense to go into therapy. But if you're just doing it lishma, the psyche is infinite. You go infinitely down, like internal, and then just keep on going layers and layers and layers and layers. And there's a danger of withdrawing focus from external reality, which is ultimately where the greater Chochmah lies, you know. And there's obviously the opposite problem where you go so much into the external world that you just ignore your internal world. That's also a problem, you know. But that's kind of like the paradigm I'm viewing here. The first half of the pasuk is dealing with someone who utilizes their wine to like to fully indulge in their internal world. And then the second half is talking about someone who uses wine to attempt to fully escape from the external world. You know, is that making any sense? I know, again, I'm not saying that's a final idea, but like, and again, I'm trying to solve a specific problem. It doesn't make sense to me that the first half is talking about the specific thing of a Leitz yayin, and the second half is talking about Chochmah development, you know.
And the first one, you're saying the fact that he's using wine to like escaping from his
internal need to self-control and self-regulate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not internal like issues in general.
No, not internal issues in general. Yeah. Although he is doing that also because we said that the late part of one of the features of Leitz is that he's blind to his own faults. Yeah.
So is Leitz being used as an example of a category?
Yes. So then, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, so why is Leitz the choice? Like, why isn't it?
It was something else you were just asking.
No, I can answer that and with a not satisfying answer, but it's one that is authorized by Rabbeinu Yonah, which is that I know we didn't read Rabbeinu Yonah yet, but he says that the pasuk was talking about a Leitz, and it's segueing into this from that topic. Yeah, the last two we're talking about Leitz.
Yeah,
you know,
it might be not satisfying in general, but I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, because
it makes sense to have an example, but like singling out a Leitz without explaining that's more general is like
right.
But then the fact that it's a transition from
and we've seen this in Rabbeinu Yonah before, that he will explain how this next pasuk is teaching its own idea, but it carries elements of the previous one just for like the sake of like associative order, meaning that if this pasuk, conceivably this pasuk could appear in a different place and could completely convey its idea, but in order to make an associative like ordering, then it uses an example from the previous one. Like let's say, for example, like, previous pasuk is about laziness, and the next pasuk will talk about a lazy person who will become poor. And really, this pasuk is about poverty, but because poverty is a common outcome of laziness, then it chose that example of a lazy person to express it. Stuff like, I'm not so keen on that, but if it's good enough for Rabbeinu Yonah, then it means like it's good enough for Mishlei. Yeah, Avi?
Yeah, so two things. So first of all, I think the thing that's bothering you about how like it's the first half seems to be very specific and the second half seems to be more generalized.
Yeah.
I feel like you could say that they're both generalized, and the first half, like obviously we're giving this specific example, but I feel like you could say the first half is saying that he's using something from the external world to escape his internal world, and then the second half is saying that he is using that internal state of mind of being not like being in a drunk state of mind or whatever escape state of mind, then escape the external world.
Okay, that sounds like a good parallel. Let me think about that for 1 second. It sounded really good. Right, so the first half is using an external
something outside of himself
to escape the internal world, which is not what I was saying, but that would be another approach.
Right, and specifically identifying like using an object, like a substance, I guess.
Right. But just to clarify the difference between what I'm saying and what you're saying is that I was saying he's using it not to escape his internal world, but to indulge his inner world. Now, you could say, like with Rabbeinu Yonah, that one of the things the Leitz is trying to do is he's trying to, instead of coping with his own midos, he's projecting, and using, like, and that would be fine also.
I kind of feel like I feel like it's just like a different word, escape, indulge, but like he is indulging in these negative things to escape whatever he's feeling. Like people don't just do this for fun. Like there's obviously something.
Well, the late stuff, but yeah, go ahead.
But how did he become a late? Like he didn't just wake up and like, hey, I'm gonna make fun of people. Presumably something going on in his psyche that like makes it that he feels like he has to do that, or he wants to engage in that activity.
We can make our interpretations closer if we go with the interpretation that this is not a full-blown Leitz, but this is a wine Leitz, meaning a certain way of relating to wine, and you do see this, for example, in the like people in, I mean, this is another stereotype, which I'm sure is real, but like I'm just going to use the stereotype, is like the dad who's like an alcoholic who like, who gets drunk and then takes out all of his own personal issues like on his family members, like through verbal or physical abuse. Like that's like that guy might not be a Leitz in terms of when he's hanging out with other construction workers, not to, but he's not like going around mocking other people, but like this is how when he's not distracted by the external world and he's faced with his inner demons, he avoids facing them by like putting himself into this intoxicated state and then like taking it on others.
Exactly.
Right. And then the second part you're saying is the opposite way of coping. So this really is about, it's essentially about is it essentially about the alcohol? Is that the subject? And like Leitz is being used as an example? I think that's what we're saying, right?
Yes. Yeah,
right.
That it's essentially about that changing your internal state of being through a substance.
Right.
An escape.
Right. Yeah.
And then once you're in that state of mind,
you feel free that you don't have to think about
it
this
also
stuff.
allows you to express your weakness.
Yeah.
And to I mean, it's a mistake, but it allows you to not gain Chochmah, which is hard. Meaning it allows, but I think that idea there is like to just escape also from like external everything.
Yeah.
You just escape.
Yeah.
And then your mind is in a different state of mind.
Right.
You don't have to deal with your internal problems.
Yeah.
It's different, but you don't have to deal with your external problems either.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And this also answers our question of how do you measure b'kol hashogeg bo lo yach? How do you measure kol hashogeg bo? Erring in it. If this is how you're using it, then that's erring in it. Meaning like if you merely drinking wine or merely even drinking like it's not a quantitative thing. It has to do with what you're using it for. If you're using it in order to avoid facing your internal issues or you're using it to avoid facing your external issues, then that's the shogeg bo. That's the measure of shogeg bo.
Yeah, and I think you could even take it a step further. Sorry, Joe. I think you could even take it a step further to say, that the mistake is even deeper than that. It's not that you're using it to avoid dealing with things, but you make the mistake that this is how you deal with things. Meaning, like, I have a problem. Well, if I do this, the problem's not there anymore. So this is the thing that I'm going to do to deal with my problem.
So that certainly is one example of that. But I think a lot of people do this without being aware that they're doing it to avoid dealing with their problems. You know. So so the essential thing is the fact that this is how they are dealing with their problems, whether or not they realize it.
Right.
What do you do, Joe?
Just a technical point. Is that construction worker, abusive husband, bad guy? Is that, would you categorize that guy as a Leitz?
No.
Something else.
I would categorize him. So now we're having a new category as a wine Leitz, you know. But I wouldn't categorize him as a Leitz if he doesn't do this in his waking life. Like this guy, like if you add up the hours in his day and you look at how he interacts with his friends and like his boss and stuff, he's not being a Leitz. Whereas the true Leitz is like that with people in general, you know.
But even that drunkenness that doesn't really feel like a late summons. It feels more like drunken.
Well, the thing that makes it late Sonos is the fact that he, like, not every, like, there are people who get drunk and don't engage in aggressive speech and behavior and like lording it over others, you know. But the thing that makes it a late thing is those two qualities of the aggression and the haughtiness, you know, that sense of superiority and like putting other people down verbally, and you know, that's like the hallmark of late hallmarks to yeah.
Like aggressively putting others down.
Aggressively putting others down, yeah. Yeah. Oh, before I forget, I don't want to dwell on this, but I found support for you. The Midrash Mishlei, which we don't go into because it's Midrash, but says that wine in the pasuk is a makro. Midrash Mishlei? Yeah. The Midrash on Mishlei. Yeah. I don't know how authoritative it is as a Midrash, but and I think that it might also be a Gemara or a Yaakov Shimoni says that wine is a makro for Divrei Torah. And I don't remember how it interprets it, but that is using the wine as a makro for knowledge. So like, let's put that. I would like to explore that maybe if we have time, but like I just wanted to before I forgot. Yeah.
I'd like to discuss the idea that Nathan came up with, because it's not a college idea, and it's like
okay. And then I have a Metzudas David, and then maybe Rabbeinu Yonah.
Oh yeah. So so the way that we read the pasuk is that wine is a Leitz, and that shiur cries out.
Okay. Wine is a Leitz hayayin, and shiur cries out. Yeah. Okay.
And we said that first thing you can have
just to make sure I understand, structurally that's not the same form repeated.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a weakness. It is a little weird though.
Wait, why?
Because
is a Leitz and the shiur is
because he's feeding. I mean, I guess in that sense it is, but I guess it's not saying shiur is a crier outer. Right. Oh. Like homeh is being used as a verb and Leitz is being used as a noun. I just want to make sure I understood that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But the nouns in the pasuk are the wine and the shiur.
Yeah.
And we said basically the audience is like is not like a Leitz, or it's like generic individual. And he's making the point that when a person can not be a Leitz in general, and like not even less necessarily think they have Leitz-like qualities, but when a person is like intoxicated, it can bring out these like latent like Leitz qualities. And so it's so because those qualities are only like appearing when a person is drunk, it's calling wine the Leitz.
Right. Is that also what Ariel was kind of saying?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
He was saying something.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's very similar to the Rabbeinu Yonah. Do you know if you did the Rabbeinu Yonah? Because that is very similar to Rabbeinu Yonah. All right. So before we do Rabbeinu Yonah, I want to do the Metzudas David, because this is a really interesting idea. I think, okay, this is the only time I've ever said this. I think the text is corrupt.
What?
Okay, and this is not based on any manuscript thing. I like usually Metzudas David is so good at explaining stuff. Like I'm gonna say this like outright. I don't think he's explaining the first half of the pasuk at all. Okay, but our goal is to save Metzudas David, and like say that the text is not corrupt because he put all the idea on the second half. Okay.
We have to be the Metzudas.
Oh yeah.
And when you say that text is corrupt, what do you mean?
I mean, like I feel like there's words missing. Like,
Okay.
and again, it's not based on any manuscript, and he's a very recent Parish, so like it'd be weird if the text was corrupt. And I've never seen any differences in Metzudas David, but I feel like when Ken and I were preparing this, we were like, it feels like something is just not being said here. Okay, so let's look at it though.
How recent is?
How recent? 1800s, late 1800s, I think. Yeah, he's prominent because even though Toras Chaim only does Rishonim, he's in all the Toras Chaims. He's not a Rishon though. Yeah, he made it in. Yeah. Okay, so Metzudas David, Leitz at bottom right. Leitz hayayin, shose hayayin hu Leitz. One who drinks wine is a Leitz. Okay. V'shose hashechar yehemev yitzak b'shikruso. One who drinks hard alcohol will cry out and yell in his drunkenness. V'chol shogebo, anyone who errs in it, rotulomar. Okay, check this out. Kim kol mi sheyishgebo bedato lachshov. Okay, so there's a Gemara that he quotes in Yuma that says that wine makes you clever or makes you smart. Okay, there's a Gemara in Yuma, which I haven't learned the Gemara inside. So what does it mean to err in wine? It means that anyone who errs in his mind thinking that since the Gemara says wine makes me smart, I'm going to drink a lot of wine. He will not become wise. Okay, because even if a little bit is good for making you wise, rubo kasha, a lot of it is bad. Okay, so let's try to understand the second half on its own for a second.
Wait, what about that was corrupt?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with anything with a Leitz?
Yeah, it seems to have no relation whatsoever.
No relation to Leitz whatsoever. And he yeah, if you think this is easy to solve, then I'm happy because I want you to solve it. We worked on this for a while, but anyway.
It's so clear the problem.
Okay, so let's focus on the second half, and you tell me how this has anything to do with the Leitz. Okay, so apparently there's this Gemara where, and again, we might have to look at the Gemara inside at some point, but it says that a little bit of wine is good for the mind. That would be a good proverb. Little wine is good for the mind. Yeah. And this guy says, because a little bit of wine is good for the mind, I'm going to drink a lot, and then I'll get really smart.
Right.
So that is what it means to err with wine, and he will not become smart, which is a very Mida Keneged Mida type, Mishlei Mida Keneged Mida type thing. Now I'll mention that even though I think this is talking about wine, because this is probably the only thing that they said, I feel like there are definitely other substances that people say this type of thing with, right? And I mentioned yesterday that all that book, Daily Rituals, a lot of the creative artists and thinkers, felt they got into this state where they felt that they needed to engage in substance use in order to fuel their creativity. And almost all cases, either it killed them or it stopped their creativity, or it led to this life of constant struggle, But people do this, but this quantitative distinction also is real. So for example, like I know that there are a lot of studies being done with certain hallucinogens that small amounts can actually be therapeutic if done in the right way. But the mistake is that people then say, oh, mushrooms cure you, or they expand your mind, boom. And then they end up either, plunging into unhealthy relationship with them, or they end up literally killing themselves, or they end up permanently altering their brain state, or it's bad. So people definitely do stuff with that, Yeah. So what is what's the idea of the pasuk according to him? And maybe you can unify the Leitz thing. And the shechar, by the way, is that he's saying that this is about a Leitz, and then the shota shechar is a different person than the Leitz.
Could you read that?
One who drinks wine is a scoffer, which also is problematic, by the way, because not everyone who drinks wine is a scoffer.
Right. He doesn't explain that at all.
He doesn't explain it at all. And then one who drinks hard alcohol will cry out in his drunkenness. Now that is often true. If you're drinking hard alcohol, it does make you cry out. Whether crying out means saying stuff that you don't mean, or crying out for more drink. And speaking of the problem we had last time of the specificity and generality, according to him, the first half is very general. I mean, specific about a Leitz, but it's general. Second half is a very, very specific rationalization that someone uses for drinking a lot of wine, which is it's going to make me smart. We're not talking about a drunkard. We're not talking about the construction worker. Which also doesn't apply to Leitz. That's not why Leitz is drinking wine, right? He's saying, I want to drink wine in order to get smart. Yeah.
Maybe he's storing ideas, like, and he thinks that but by drinking he's gonna get smart, but it's really gonna cause him to think he's like better than the things that he's learning, and and he's gonna dismiss it, and then when he's laughing, he's not gonna like realize that his conclusions were based on the Leitz-like qualities that were brought up.
Okay, so 2 objections to that. One is that he doesn't say it.
Yeah.
And again, this is why I'm so, I'm not as exacting with other Mefarshim, because the godless of the Metzudas David is he says exactly what needs to be said to get you the idea and no more, and if he made anything that hinted to us at the fact that like this second guy is somehow mocking ideas, or that was the nature of his not becoming wise, I would be willing to accept that, but there's nothing there. And secondly, like I think there's a much simpler explanation for why someone who overindulges in wine will not become wise is because he's overindulging in wine, like he's getting drunk. He's not, so like I reject it on the grounds of Metzudas and on the grounds of simplicity. Yeah.
You tried.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you tried. That's what I want people to do, but I'm not going to accept it just because you tried.
I don't know. I'm not so bothered by the question.
So then by all means, explain to me.
No, but I'm saying, why can't it just be so he could just be emphasizing the second half of the pasuk, and that's where he.
So what's the idea of the pasuk then?
Yeah, what's the
pasuk teaching? What's the relation between the 2 halves? Why are these 2 separate pasukim?
I don't know.
Okay, that's what's bothering me.
Yeah, I hear that, but like,
I mean, maybe I just haven't seen enough Metzudas David, but it's just because like even if we didn't come up with any idea of what he's saying, it doesn't. I just don't see why that. Like maybe he's just saying something that we're not getting what he means or something, or he does. I don't know. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah,
I guess.
Why are we jumping to the conclusion that it's?
I'm not saying it's actually a false text, but I'm saying like it feels like that. You know, I'm not not to knock on Tosfos, but the critique of Tosfos versus Rashi in terms of faulty text. Sure. Tosfos are very quick to say like Haki Garcinan. Mm-hmm. Like Rashi rarely says that. And that apparently like is did they actually have like tons of manuscripts that they were saying like or are they amending, like there's a certain like quickness to amend text. I'm not of that school, but especially with something as late as Metzudas David, but like it feels like something is missing here. And again, I'm just he's so good at explaining what he means. Yeah. And the pasuk has to be unified. That I will not budge on. Mm. Okay, and not only does it have to be unified, but let's say you tried unifying by saying, well, maybe you're saying 2 bad effects of wine. Yeah. No, there's tons of bad effects of wine. Why are we putting these 2 in the same pasuk?
Well, does he have to have that same premise that you have, that there has to be a strict unity?
I think you want a syllogism? Yeah. All Chachamim hold that there has to be unity in the psukim. Metzudas David is a Chacham, therefore he has to hold that there's unity in the pasuk. Right. Yeah.
But that's a note you're Scotland.
I know. That's why I was smirking. Yeah. But I do think that you don't know how to learn Mishlei if you think that Shlomo is going to put one pasuk that is just like there's no relationship between the 2 halves other than like the Malutz thing. You have to have some unity, because he could just make another pasuk. That's what a proverb is. A proverb is one idea that you're saying in a sentence. And
we know Metzudas David holds that.
I have every reason to believe that. Yeah.
And why can't it just be that he's not explaining the pasuk in its entirety? He's only explaining half of it.
And I'm saying that's from my experience with Metzudas David, that he is so good at explaining every part of the pasuk. Okay. And I am assuming that we're missing something, but it just feels like there's something missing here. And especially that first statement is just also not clear. Shota hayayin hu Leitz. Really? So like we're all Leitzim on Shabbos when we drink wine,
the one who drinks wine, not like you drink wine, but like you're a drinker.
A drinker. Oh. Yeah. That's a good one.
Is that not a possibility?
I have half possible reads.
Okay.
The two he's presenting opposites. And like the first half, they're trying to use wine in some bad way.
Yeah.
And then the second half is a person who's like opposites of the both bad.
Yeah.
So the second half, he's trying to use wine to get Chochmah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work.
Okay. This I'm liking. Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah. Meaning
Yeah,
the first. Yeah. Go ahead.
And so I'm not exactly sure about what he's saying in the first half, but there's something where person is drinking wine not for any like good effect. Like a person, let's say a person who's like drinking wine like so they can mock people or or like so that they can be like unrestrained. And the second half is a person who's drinking wine because they're trying to get Chochmah, but really both are bad. It's opposite.
Well, it's one of the and that's a category we've seen before. It's the two bad opposites.
right, and then.
But meaning, are you saying that he disagrees with that Gemara that says a little bit of wine is good?
No, he's not disagreeing.
He's interpreting it, saying specifically a little bit is good, but a lot of it is bad.
You don't make the mistake that if you drink a lot, you'll be more smart.
Yeah.
Meaning you got the way he's seeing it is you've got two guys who are going to the bar.
You got to go to the bar.
One guy is going to be the Leitz or to try out. The other guy is going because he thinks if I get drunk, I'm gonna get a lot of Chochmah.
Yeah.
So, but they're
not both Leitz.
No, they're not both Leitz.
Yeah, and Metzudas David is definitely saying that they're not both Leitz.
The second guy is just like a fool, I guess.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. Like both of them are making a bad decision.
Yeah.
Right.
I got to go soon, but I just wanted to mention one thing for the second half of the Metzudas David is that it is an interesting rationalization where, like, what is this guy doing? He's reading the Gemara and he's seeing that it says, "Oh, wine makes you smart," and he doesn't bother to understand how, and just uses that as an excuse to like partake of this. And I feel like that mechanism of rationalization is ubiquitous. Like people use that all the time. Like I'm reminded also of like the Rambam's thing of, this is a very different application, but the Rambam's thing about how people will see extremely pious individuals engaging in extremist behavior, and they're really doing it because they know that they need to like work on a specific midah. But like the person say, oh, rolling around in the snow is like good, or like wearing black and like being degraded is good, and like they'll make that into an absolute. I have to go, but are we okay with spending one more day on this pasuk and like doing other parts? Because I still want to do Rabbeinu Yonah also and think about this, and I do want to explore the wine being a mushal thing. Yeah. All right, let's stop here for today.
Eating coal also, right?
Eating coal.